at your company. We'll just briefly show you how to do that. And then we want to go through some of the user settings and various options and things. And then if everything goes well, you'll kind of see a little bit of it in action here as well. There's really two different parts to Outlook integration. So when we talk about integrating Outlook to SalesLogix, there are two different applications that are required to do, one being email integration, and some people are just, that's all they want. I just want to be able to integrate my email, and that's done with the SalesLogix Desktop Manager application. And then the second kind of part of this or component is the syncing of calendar activities, tasks, and to-dos. And that's accomplished by a second application called Telesync, or SalesLogix Telesync. So we're going to touch on both. And the first thing I'll kind of describe is, well, how do you get this up and going if you have a SalesLogix installation? You've got Outlook, let's assume that's what you've standardized on for your email client. The first thing you need to do is it communicates through the SData portal. And if there's administrators on the call, you would go into the SalesLogix Application Architect, and under the core portals, if I double-click on that, you will see the SData portal, and that's basically SalesLogix's version of web services. So that's how the communication mechanism they're using between Outlook and SalesLogix is done through a web services portal. That portal happens to be the SData portal, and so as an administrator, you would need to come in here to the Architect Core Portals and click on the Deploy option, basically to make that port open and available for the users to be able to communicate with email. Now, while I'm in here, we'll just talk about Telesync also. Telesync has its own portal. It's not part of the core portal, so you'd have to do the same thing. So if you want to activate calendar synchronization and contacts between Outlook and SalesLogix, you would have to deploy this Telesync portal as well. And it's well documented. I don't want to get too deep into the bits and bytes of this part of it today, but this is the foundation of, in essence, activating or turning on the integrations, is to have these two different portals deployed. So that's probably step one as I would describe it. Okay, and so we've done that, and then the users have to install the enhancements. And that can be done from the web login screen, or also, if they're already logged in, they can do it from the Options General tab. And so if you go into the web client and you go into Tools and Options, you're going to see that there's going to be a button here also that lets you, first of all, check to see if the enhancements are already installed. So it's going to tell us that. But if it's not installed, you can click on this Install Enhancements button in the lower right corner under the General tab. And what that's going to do is install that desktop manager that I explained in the slide. And once that's installed, down here in the tray, hopefully you can see that down in the lower right corner of my screen, on my tray, I have the Sage SalesLogix Desktop Manager running, because I see the little blue ball with the little email thingy. That tells me it's at least active, installed, and running on my machine. And then next to that is the Telesync one, which again is a separate application for calendar and contact syncing. That's active and running as well. So we'll dig into those just a little bit deeper as we move forward here. Okay, so let's assume you've got that installed for each user, and this is because it's a workstation application. It does have to be done at each workstation. Next, the users have to configure the portal URL and some of the history options by right mouse clicking and then opening up the Desktop Manager. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to right click and open up the Desktop Manager, and this is the screen you're presented with. Now, virtually all the settings there are that have to deal with email integration and the Desktop Manager's role in that are done from this screen. typically, the portal URL is the same as your SalesLogix web client URL. And mine's running as a local host, so yours would be something like my company, and then the port number, whatever your URL is for the web client. And this should automatically populate when you install it, but if for some reason it doesn't, or if you're using a non-standard port or something like that, it just needs to point back to the SalesLogix website, and because I've activated and deployed that SData portal, it should see that. And you can test it here too to validate that it is indeed connecting, and it will store your username and password. And also, if you're using Windows authentication to log into SalesLogix, you can use that method as well. Down here under the history, these are some of the user configurable things that user by user, they can really decide how they want it to function. And so I've kind of checked everything. And so what I'm asking you to do is, if I'm trying to save an email that's in my Outlook to SalesLogix, I want it to let me know if it found a duplicate. You know, and that's pretty typical, unfortunately, is there's duplicates in the database. And so this will pop up a screen and tell me, okay, I found 2 contacts in the database that have the same email address of the person I got the email from, and it's going to let me pick and choose which of the 2, or maybe 3, that you want to actually create the history record for. So that's what we're doing here. We're taking emails that are in your inbox, and we're creating SalesLogix history records. That's the role of the desktop manager, is to automate that process for you. And so some of the tools are, let me know if there's a duplicate. Let me know if there is no contact with that email address. So maybe I'm trying to save an email from somebody that's not in the database at all. And so creating a history record, of course, won't work because you have to have the contact in there first. And then it also lets me choose to display the history details before saving the record. And so that looks like a typical SalesLogix view, and we'll show you that, of course, where you're creating a history record, and it lets me do things like schedule follow-ups and add my notes and things before it creates the history record. Now, with all that said, if you have all of these shut off, let's say you don't have any of these boxes checked, it's going to silently and secretly do this creation of history records for you in the background without popping up any screens or giving you any warnings or messages or information. And some folks like to work exactly that way. I just wanted to do it. I don't care about getting any pop-ups or asking for follow-ups or history or anything like that. Just create the history. So if you unchecked all of these little parameters, that's exactly what would happen. Now down here under display tray notifications, what that's going to do is it's going to pop up a little bubble of information right over the top of this desktop manager icon. Every time you click Save to SalesLogix, it's going to pop that little tray notification up just to let you know it was working and it did its thing. Again, that's a personal preference. Now, the other thing I can do is I can activate logging, or actually show logging. And so if there's a problem, let's say you're trying to troubleshoot this thing, something is not working right with your email integration, or you're not really sure what was happening, you can check this little box that says Enable Logging. And so for every email that it's recorded, you'll see a list of them here. And you can actually see kind of step-by-step all the procedures that are occurring under the hood, as it were, about, well, what exactly is the script that's occurring doing? Where did it start? You can see that it was looking for a contact named CFX Demo. It searched it. It found it. Then it looked for leads, and it found one contact, built a list, checked for history, and then it performed a query to create a new history record against this contact ID. And now it's saying, okay, I was successful at processing all that. Sorry, I scrolled a little too quick. But anyway, this is a play-by-play of exactly what's happening. Probably the only time you'd want to have that on is if you're trying to troubleshoot a problem that you're observing with the system. So that's basically it. And so if the test is successful, it'll say, hey, I logged in, and off you go. And so what did it do? Well, the result of installing that desktop manager is it adds a new icon to your toolbar here called Record to History SalesLogix. And so what that lets you do is you can hover over an email that you would like to save in SalesLogix as a history record, choose Record to History, and it's going to fire off that mechanism to do that. And if there's any prompts you had turned on, you're going to see that happen, and so forth. Now, you'll get that same ability if you create a new email, for example. You will see another icon here called Send SalesLogix. So now that's for recording a history record for an email that you originated. So you're sending it from your workstation, and you're sending it to a contact record in the database. And so what it's going to do is it's going to do that same procedure. It's going to try to find John Abbott. It's going to do the lookup, prompt you if you want to create a history record. And again, sending SalesLogix sends the email and tries to record it to history. You don't have to do that because you can just click the traditional send button. John's still going to get the email. The difference is, though, is it is not going to try to create the history record. Now, the third part of the integration that's included is drag and drop. This is a little bit trickier because you kind of have to have both windows up and running. And so the way this would work is, let's say I have an email, but I really don't want it attached to the John Abbott contact record. Yes, it's from John, but I want to put it, under somebody else's history record or multiple contacts history records or a ticket or an opportunity or something like that. So what you can do is literally grab it and drag it over to SalesLogix. And this is why I say it's a little tricky because you have to get these windows in a particular organized way where both screens are available. Oops, I'm moving too quick here. Too much clicking. There we go. And so you can just drag it over to the Notes and History tab, let it go, and it'll create a history record. And again, that's sort of a way to manually do it, and that's part of that integration. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about the next component here, and that's the Outlook calendar, task, and contacts integration setup. We already talked about deploying the Telesync portal. Telesync is a software package licensed by SalesLogix, and it's basically a turnkey Outlook integration solution. So they license that product from Nokia, who owns Telesync, and it's specifically built to work with SalesLogix and Outlook, and also Lotus Notes, also if you're a Lotus Notes user. And so it's a little tricky to install it, though, because the users have to run and install the Telesync application from their workstation, and there's no automatic way to do that. And so the actual Telesync install.exe file is on the SalesLogix DVD, and you can either put that on a shared folder or a memory stick or whatever you use to move files around. It is an executable, so it might fail if you try to attach it to an email. But anyway, so you would run that Telesync installation application, and once that's complete, that's going to show up like we looked at here down below as a tray icon, and it's also going to show up in your Windows startup. This one doesn't start by itself like the desktop manager does, and so you got to make sure that it's installed and running down here. Here's also the SalesLogix desktop manager, and that's so that your users don't have to start these programs when they log in the morning. They'll just start up for them. And so sometimes it seems to do it automatically, but other times, depending on some of your settings, it doesn't always do that successfully. So just check for that, because you can exit out of these and kill them, and then you got to try to restart them again throughout the day if that happens. So you can just make sure they're running down here in the tray and ready to do their thing. Now, the next step in the setup is we need to set up a group. If you're going to sync contacts. You have to set up a group of ad hoc contacts called Sync SalesLogix. And so it's kind of specific that it has to be named that. So Sync SalesLogix, that's a list or ad hoc group that I created and then designated that ad hoc group of contacts as the group that I wish to synchronize with my Outlook system. And so right now, I only have one contact in that group, and it's John Abbott. And so he exists in my Outlook system as a contact record. And so there you see John Abbott as a contact. And the reason he's there is because he is in the Sync SalesLogix ad hoc group that I built. And so when you install Telesync on a user's workstation, again, a couple things have to happen. Build an ad hoc group called Sync SalesLogix, and just start out with one contact, right-click, add to group, call it Sync SalesLogix. And once you have that ad hoc group built, now you can come in here to your options and under the General tab and tell Telesync which ad hoc group you want to use for the synchronization mechanism with Outlook. And that's what I've done. I've said I want to use Sync SalesLogix. If I had multiple ad hoc groups, there'd be a drop-down and I can choose more than one. Well, you'd have a choice of more than one. You still have to pick one. And so it's telling me Sync SalesLogix, there's one contact in it, which is true, and that's the group that I want to be synchronizing with my Outlook contacts, okay? So I'll just show you quickly how to add another one here, and we'll do it from SalesLogix, and we'll also do it from Outlook just to be fun. Okay, so let's go to all contacts, for example, because we're going to pick another contact, and we're going to add him to the Sync SalesLogix group so that we're going to have two in there. And let's just pick on this Georgia Adams for no particular reason, that Coca-Cola. So I'm going to highlight that record, or I can click in the box to say this is the person I want to work with. And I say clicking. Seems to be stuck on something here. Oh, so it has to happen in the demo, of course, otherwise it's just no fun. What am I doing? Oh, there we go. The computer's lagging behind me. We'll pick on Douglas then. Okay, so we have him highlighted. Right-click, and we'll add him to an existing group. And because it's an ad hoc group, so I right-clicked on him. I'm going to say Add to Existing Group. I don't know why it's running so slow. Come back. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why my machine has suddenly gotten very slow. It was working great. There we go. Sync Sales. Whoops. Didn't want a new group. Try it one more time. I may have to restart here. Sorry about that. Let's try this again, see if it's caught up to me. Well, I guess it's not going to help. It's not going to do it. I'm just going to log out. Maybe I just need to get out and log back in here quick. It can be pretty boring if this isn't keeping up with me. See if I can find out what's going on with my machine. Something is causing me trouble. Don't really see anything obvious. Wow. Really sorry about that. I'm not sure why, but this thing is just seems to almost have completely locked up on me. Looking around and really nothing's happening. Let me close Outlook just for fun. And maybe it's Outlook because that isn't even closing. Okay, let me try one more time here. Let me see if I got my resources back. And I apologize. I practiced several times and everything worked great, but today, for some reason, just fighting me. Okay, let me see if I can get back in there. Seems to be something with Firefox, but we're back. Okay, thanks for your patience. Sorry about that. Hopefully it won't do that again to us. So, all right, so we were talking about contacts. Let's try to get back in there. Okay, here we go. So we're going to right-click on Douglas here and add him to the Sync SalesLogix group. So now we should have two, which we do. We have two contacts in the Sync SalesLogix group, and we just have one in SalesLogix. And so I'm going to manually run this in Telesync, and we're going to dig into the setting it up too, but I just want to kind of show it to you working here, and then I'm going to show you how I got here. Okay, so I've asked in Telesync through some settings to give me confirmation screens, and that's what it's doing. It's saying, okay, Scott, I'm about to add a contact to Outlook, and that's what it's telling me, and I'm going to change a contact in Outlook. And if I think there's anything fishy about that, I can say, well, show me the details. What are you changing? And so it's going to make a change to John Abbott. I must have changed something in his record. But you can also see that it's adding Addie Douglas, Tricom. It's going to add it because all I did was added him to my Sync SalesLogix group. So I'm going to accept the change, and then you can see, bang, now I have two contacts, Addie and John, in SalesLogix. Okay, now let's go the other way. So let's add a contact here. We'll call him John Tester, and for the company, we'll just say ZZZ. Now, if I save it, he is not going to become a contact in SalesLogix, and here's why. The contacts in your Outlook are integrated with SalesLogix based on the category they belong to. So think about the category as the equal of being in that Sync SalesLogix Ad Hoc group. And so what I have to do is I have to highlight John here, my new guy, and add him to a category in Outlook called Sync SalesLogix. And so I created that category in Outlook, called it Sync SalesLogix, made it red for no particular reason. And so if I change him to the Sync SalesLogix group, you notice how it has this red bar, Sync SalesLogix. That's the category screen. And so all three of these are going to have a red bar. And so what that is, that triggers in Telesync to go, oh, okay, John's in Outlook, but now he's also going to be in SalesLogix because I put him in the Sync SalesLogix red category. Color doesn't matter. And you can see down here below these little Telesync notifications are firing off on me in the background. And so you can see it started, and it'll tell you when it ended. And again, if those bother you, you can shut them off. I just put them on there because it's entertaining for today, but it might be annoying after a while, so you can kill that. And so now I have 3 contacts in the Sync SalesLogix. John Tester, he's new because I added him from Outlook, and he's forever linked. And so the other thing that will happen is, so a new account was added, a new contact was added. I, by default, am his account manager, and the owner is everyone, and you can make changes to that after it's created in SalesLogix. But every new contact or account you add through Outlook is going to be owned by everyone until you add into a group. So you saw a brand new record get created, but what if I want to make a change to one? And I can do that. You can see, okay, well, I misspelled John, so I can go, oops, I really should spell it correctly, so we'll fix that O in his name. That wasn't my plan. And then I can also maybe give him, a phone number. I'm kind of finishing out the record now in SalesLogix, and gave him a couple of numbers, fixed his name, and I'm going to save my changes. And now the next time Telesync runs, I'm going to manually force it to go here. I'm going to say sync now. And when you manually sync, you always get these screens that pop up. But if it's auto-syncing, which I'll talk about, you don't necessarily get these. And again, what is it going to change? Well, it's going to fix John's name. Great. That's what I wanted it to do. And so now, if we go back here, hey, he spelled right, and he has phone numbers. And I can do the same thing in the other direction. So I can make changes. You're probably getting it now. I can say he's the CEO. Now, here's what's cool about making changes in Outlook. It is push enabled. Now, pushing means that where typically I have to tell Telesync to run at a certain timed interval, every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes or whatever. So it's running on a scheduler rather than all of the time because it's batch-based. But when you're going from Outlook to SalesLogix, it's push-based. And so what that means is as soon as Outlook registers that John is the CEO and I've made a change and saved the change, it immediately fires off in Telesync. And, I say immediately, but maybe a second or two, because you can see it's running now down in the right corner. Off we go. It's ended, so it tells me, okay, it did it. And so now, if we look at John, and I just refresh the screen, he should now be the CEO because that's what I made him over there in Outlook. There he is. Ta-da. Okay. Now, we'll talk about calendars, kind of the same thing, except there's a couple of other twists to it that are pretty cool. Calendar items synchronize in the same way. And so if I drag on my SalesLogix calendar and I create a new something or other, demo meeting, and it's an hour and 20 minutes long. It's got an alarm, and it's high or medium priority here. We'll give it a category and say, hope it goes well. All right, so we're going to save a brand new SalesLogix activity, but I didn't link it to anybody. I should have done that. Right now, it's not attached to a contact or an account, but that's okay. It's going to show up in that same way over in Outlook. In fact, maybe we'll let it do its thing. I'll show you that. So we right-click and we say Sync Now, and away we go. What's it going to add? One new demo meeting. That's what I was hoping. And so now if I look at my calendar over here, here's that demo meeting. And so hope it goes well. And then we're going to say notes, whoops, from Outlook. Can't type either. We'll say that. Now the push sync started. I didn't have to do it because it's a push sync. And then that is going to update that activity. And then now finally, I want to open this meeting up because I want to add an account and contact. Because right now it's not linked to anybody, but I would like it to be, because I'm not meeting with myself. So I'm going to say I'm going to go to Abbott Limited, and I'm going to meet with John Abbott. So I've added those details to this meeting. So now you see that. Now it's not push going from SalesLogix to Outlook, but it's still going to do it at the interval I established as a user. So now you can see our little meeting has John Abbott's name, his company, his phone number, the SalesLogix ID. Don't mess with any of this, because that'll break the link. This is how Telesync identifies which calendar item is linked to which calendar item over in SalesLogix. You can type anything you want below the line, but yeah, don't mess up this header information, because that's the key field, as it were. Now I've also got tasks syncing, and so I think maybe now that you've sort of seen this in action, I'm going to show you some of the setup options. And so I right-click and I open up in Telesync, and I'm going to go into Application Setup. Okay, so these are the 3 data entities in Outlook that we can synchronize to, but I don't have to. I can maybe only do appointments and not contacts and not to-dos. So each user has the ability to pick and choose what data moves around and also decide if it's 2-direction or not. And so you can have it be 1 direction, my daughter's favorite band, and this is set up to be 2-way, or I can go 1-way from SalesLogix to Outlook only, or from SalesLogix to Outlook only, or both ways. And so why wouldn't you do both? I do. And then you can also say when to sync. When should I sync? Remember, it's batch-based. So you can say only when I click the button. You'd have to have a good memory, but that's fine. You can say sync automatically. Well, how often? Every minute, day, when I log in. And because I have when a change in Outlook is detected, that's the push part. Love that part. And if you say when I connect to SalesLogix, that's going to do it whenever you basically start up SalesLogix. It'll do it once for you. And so your choice, however often you want it to run. Now, you have some other settings in here about how does it deal with confirmations. What happens if I delete a record? It requires you to confirm deletions or not, otherwise it's just going to delete it or mark it for deletion. Confirm changes and additions, and that's those screens you saw popping up today that were saying I'm about to make these changes. What do you want me to do? So those are the confirmations, and you can pick and choose again as a user. You can decide what to do if there's a conflict, which means, okay, maybe I changed a meeting in Outlook and I changed it in SalesLogix to something different since the last time the sync ran. Well, that's a conflict, and it's not going to know which one wins. And so what that is going to do is bring up a conflict resolution screen to let you decide what you want to do about it. You also have field mapping capabilities for, for calendars, contacts, and to-dos. And so all the obvious ones are already mapped. Which field in SalesLogix goes to which field in Outlook. You can see the ones that are already mapped. And you can also turn other ones on. Now, SalesLogix has 10 custom fields called custom field 1, 2, 3, 4, up through 10, as you may have guessed. And so you can choose, well, only 3 in appointments, but 10 in contacts. So you can choose to populate other SalesLogix fields. It's probably not a good example to do it in appointments, but this is where you can pick and choose what maps to where, okay? And so you can make some alterations to that. I'll show you in context too. You can also filter data to exclude things or include things. Like, for example, I told it to exclude private data. Well, why would I do that? And that's because, well, maybe I have, a doctor's appointment. Sure. That's what you say. Okay, so, but I want that to be private. So I click private in Outlook. What that means is it's not going to show up in SalesLogix. It's in Outlook, and you see that little padlock saying it's private. But this is not going to synchronize over to SalesLogix because I don't want it in SalesLogix C. So it's already given me some warnings that I've got some screens open. But you can build multiple filters in here. Only one can be active at a time, but you can also have multiple conditions within these filters. I'm not going to dig too much into that detail today because that would take a bit of time, but we can certainly do that as well. And then you can also map to certain folders. Outlook supports multiple folders. I'm choosing the default folder, and that works fine for me. Okay, so let's say we're going to cancel, sure, and cancel here again. And let's just take a quick look at contacts because there's a slightly different. You can pick which Outlook profile to use for Outlook also. So if you have multiple profiles, maybe you have a personal profile and a business profile in Outlook, you can pick and choose that. But we're going to say, whoops, sorry, clicking too quick. Same thing for contacts, two-way, one-way. When to sync? Well, on whatever interval I want or push. And then you can also deal with confirmations. And then I'll show you field mappings. Field mappings in contacts gives you a lot more fields you can map. This is pretty cool because, you know, in SalesLogix there's a lot of other data about contacts that would maybe not show up in Outlook, but you'd like them to. And so you can do things like, you know, map the spouse's name, the profession, billing address if they got multiple addresses, and all these other Outlook-y fields could be mapped to any one of these 10 custom fields we were talking about. These are pointing at each other, but they're not active. See, now I clicked in the middle, and now the spouse is going to end up in the custom field 5 in SalesLogix. If you like to communicate with people's spouses, get you in trouble. Okay, so let's go back to cancel out of here. Cancel out of here. Okay, so to-dos go to tasks. Now here's what gets a little confusing. In SalesLogix, you can have an untimed activity. You can have an untimed meeting and an untimed phone call. Those still show up in the calendar in Outlook, but if you do a to-do in SalesLogix, it shows up in the task in Outlook. So if we go to Outlook tasks, these are actually all of my SalesLogix to-dos, okay? So they show up under tasks, but an unscheduled or a phone call or a meeting in SalesLogix that has no duration, you know, timeless, that is going to still show up on the calendar in Outlook because it's still considered a calendared item, but there's no time, and so that's still going to show up, but on the calendar and not as a task. So hopefully that makes sense. So anyway, it shows up over here on the task panel in SalesLogix. We'll sync here. We'll sync now. There's the button. I'm going to accept that change. Okay, so now over in Outlook, I should have a calendar item called Test for Friday sitting up there at the top because it's timeless. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, Bree, that was everything I was hoping to cover. Again, it's not everything there is to know. I'll tell you there are, you know, excellent help, online help, right, context-sensitive help, right inside of SalesLogix. And so call on that if you want to dig a little deeper into some of this stuff. There's a help guide for Telesync. Right from this button, you can click Help and dig much deeper into more you know, detailed information and configuration settings. Any questions, Bree, from anybody so far? A lot of ground to cover.
we do have a few here, and We can start out with this one. For users to install the Desktop Manager, what level of privileges must they have on their desktop, such as maybe administrative privileges?
Yeah, that would be best if they were admin, and I'm probably the wrong guy to ask because there are some specific privileges you have to have. Like I said, I'm not the expert. Admin would be preferred, but a lot of companies don't like that. I get that. And so they have to be a user at least with the power to install and configure applications because it does update the registry. It does install some DLLs that are going to register with the system. And so the installation guide, implementation guide, goes into greater detail about that than I can probably cover today.
Okay. This one, you'll probably have to jog your memory to where you were in the presentation here, but what does display tray notifications do?
That is the annoying little pop-up windows that you saw, and maybe you couldn't see them. Down here in the lower right corner of my screen, every time in Telesync or the Desktop Manager ran to save emails, it was popping up these tray notifications. And so I'll just show you that real quick. So we'll just do another test here and click Save. And note, I'm not going to push any buttons, but you'll see down here at the bottom, within a second or two, you're going to get these little tray pop-up warnings to tell you that the push sync is starting and stopping. It's just kind of a little nice to have to say, okay, I really am working, I'm not broken. Do you see those popping up down the bottom in Telesync for SalesLogix? Okay, that's what those are. Those are the tray warnings.
Okay, the next question I have is, where's the option to display logging? Does that make...
yeah. So if we open this up, on the SalesLogix Desktop Manager, it has its own logs, and you have this view log window. So that's part of it. Oops, I don't want to exit. I just want to close. And then in Telesync, you have to right-click and show logs off of the menu, the right-click menu, show push sync logs. So this is showing you the logs for contacts, calendars, and tasks. So 2 different logs, 2 different applications.
Okay. The next one is something I think a lot of people would like to know is there a way to get drag and drop to work in Firefox? And is there a plugin, or is there a plugin for Firefox that allows this?
Yeah, it does work in Firefox. It absolutely does. Firefox 10, which is really an odd release. You know, it's kind of last year. But anyway, if you install Firefox 10, and here's the thing. The desktop integration is different for IE versus Firefox. And so right inside of SalesLogix, they do give you installation instructions on how to set that up. And so I'll just show you that here. And so the answer is you have to install the proper version of Telesync, or Desktop Manager, I'm sorry. And then depending on which file type, because there's 2 different ones, it recognizes which browser you're using and puts the correct one in there. I think I'm saying that right. I could be wrong. But I know it recognizes which of the 2 browsers you're using and chooses the proper Desktop Manager. I brought up in Telesync, but I meant the Desktop Manager. And that will allow drag and drop to work with Firefox 10.
Okay. Could you provide a URL to the client-side Telesync installation executable?
No, because there isn't one. If you're an administrator, you have to take that file and put it on a destination that users can get to. That's my understanding. It is a file on the install disk. that has to be placed on a network folder that then is accessible by your users. So that's not very automated. The exception to that is if you're an offline web client user, it actually puts it on there automatically for you. Why it doesn't do it for all the other users, I'm not sure. But so yeah, it's something an administrator has to make available for the users on a network drive.
Okay. Can contacts without an email be added to the Sync SalesLogix group?
Yes, because it doesn't use the email as the key field, I don't believe. So I do not think you have to have an email. We can sure try it. Well, I'll try it here, but you can go to the next question.
Okay. Let's see. If you add an Outlook Sync SalesLogix contacts to an existing account and you misspell the account, I think I'm going to have to read through this a little bit better. A few words are missing. I'll have to come back to that one. Let's see. Okay. We do have another one. Who is the master contact record, Outlook or SalesLogix?
Well, that's up to you. That's up to how you set the synchronization direction. There is no master. They're equal. If you have two-way sync turned on, they're equal. And so depending on if you have one-way or two-way sync and in which direction you have one-way set up, you can, in essence, denote either one app or the other as the master or neither. They're equal if you have two-way sync turned on. Make sense?
Yep. Will Telesync and the SalesLogix Desktop Integration Manager work with Office 2013?
Not yet. They're working on that. It's not on the compatibility list yet. They seem to always be a bit behind on that, but I can probably say that it's coming. They'll have to be compatible eventually with it. 32-bit only, but the latest compatibility guide's available too from the SalesLogix support site, and that may have some more up-to-date information than I do, but right now it's not compatible with Office 2013.
Okay. Does Telesync work in a Citrix environment?
Yeah, I don't know why not. I don't know why it wouldn't work. Remember, though, that Citrix can be tricky if you're talking about a true Citrix, terminal services type system, because it does need unique registry entries for each user, and it does deposit certain DLLs and certain local file settings and things that are stored. But I'm pretty sure we have customers in a Citrix environment, virtual environment, that do use it successfully. And SalesLogix even publishes some specific documentation on configuring and workarounds and things to get Citrix environments working. That's pretty common. So I guess my answer is I don't know why it wouldn't work.
Okay. Do you need the SalesLogix personal web server installed as well?
Well, that would only be if you are a disconnected web client user. So if you have a laptop and you need a local copy of the SalesLogix database, that's the only time you need the personal web server because you're actually hosting the website, the whole SalesLogix website on your laptop. So a disconnected web client would need that, but you don't need it for, for this email integration and Telesync we were talking about today.
Okay. Can both an IE and a Firefox desktop manager be installed on the same desktop?
I think no. I think the answer is no, but I'm not positive about that. Generally speaking, you would want to pick one or the other, and I'm not exactly sure what method it uses to determine which is your default. I think it looks at your default browser in your Windows operating system, and that's the one it decides is the one it's going to install for you. So I don't know if you can install both. I believe it's going to end up uninstalling one and installing the other. That's been my experience anyway. I could be wrong, and maybe somebody in IT, on the call could figure this out, but I'm pretty sure you have to choose one or the other for it all to work successfully.
Okay. Our show push sync log item is grayed out. Do you know what caused this to be disabled?
No, I don't. I don't know that one.
Okay. I'm running SalesLogix in the cloud. Where do I find the Telesync executable? I don't have an installation disk.
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll post the response to that, Bree, because we have it, and that's a great question. And I'm not sure of the answer, other than I can say that we have lots of cloud clients that use it. So the cloud team must have a way to make it accessible. I just don't know what the answer to that question is. And
Okay.
so we'll post that as a follow-up on the Customer Effects website. We'll throw a quick blog up there on how to do that. I mean, you could log in through remote desktop and go get the file, assuming you knew where it was, but there's probably a bit more elegant way to do that. I'm sure they know how. I just don't know what the answer is.
Okay. Let's see. It looks like that's all we have, Scott. I have a couple others that we'll take offline and review.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We'd be happy to. And I can now answer the question, can it sync a contact with no email? Yes. Georgia Adams has no email in SalesLogix, but she is now syncing. I added her to the Sync SalesLogix group. And so, yes, she's there, even though she has no email. So the answer to that one is now yes, been confirmed.
All right. Well then, Scott, that's all we have today.
Okay.
And I want to thank everyone for all your great questions.
Yeah.
And Scott, for your time today. And
yes, and this is recorded too, Bree. So we'll be posting the recording of today's presentation up on our YouTube channel, and we'll put it on our website as well, on our Twitter feed, so you'll see that. And so you'll be able to revisit my computer lockup, which is probably the highlight.
They'll be able to fast forward through it this time, though.
Yeah, hopefully. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for all your time. We really appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Have a great afternoon.